a little bit more to the shadow side of the figure. And then I start taking a look at the painting, seeing what areas need more information to feel more complete, little marks in the shadows to give this area a little more texture and feeling of finish. I was excited to paint the shape of these palm trees. For that, I'm using some raw sienna, cobalt turquoise for this green, and I'm starting kind of at the inside of where the tree is and pulling the brush away to get those broken marks that show the texture of this tree. Pushing down and kind of pulling away and lifting my brush up, and that's how I'm creating those broken marks there. Getting a little bit more contrast and interest and texture and a nice vertical, so I brought that down there. And these little statues and things needed a few little marks and definition, some windows back there. I'm looking at the building. I want to give it more form, but I don't want to overwork it too much. That's always the delicate balance that we're trying to find when we paint. But I do need to define the shadow side of the building a bit more, give it some detail. There's some interesting arches down here. And the trick is always, how much detail do I give it in the shadows, right? I don't want to overburden the scene with detail, but I want it to feel, finished and complete and not too flat. And a little bit of texture here on the wall makes a difference. And I added a little more value. And the edge over here with this other tree. And a few little lines on the ground to give some texture and finish in the foreground. At this point, I wanted to use a little bit of gouache to finish the feeling of light on some of the figures and just look around the scene and see if there's any little highlights that I can add back in that are valuable. So first I'm looking at the figures, adding a little bit of highlight on the light side of their clothing. It gives a little more feeling of finish to the scene. Using a little bit of gouache is a nice way to get some of those small highlights and details into your painting that are hard to just paint around. And a few little darks and details up here around the top of the church. Putting some darks on the windows and trying to finish that. After that, I let my painting sit and I take a mental break and maybe come back a little while later or the next day to look at it. It never hurts to take a little break and to step away. Now that I'm looking at the scene again, there's some detail work I want to add in. So I felt like the figure needed a little more detail, a little more value and texture. I added some fence post here, and this building needed a little more finish, some more information, some marks up here to help finish up that. I added a few birds, and after those finishing touches and details, here is a look at the final painting.